Hello, I'm Rowland White. I was 10 years old when the Space Shuttle was first launched into space, too young to appreciate the Apollo moon missions. The shuttle carried the first American astronauts I'd ever seen blast off at the end of a countdown. The shuttle was the first spacecraft to capture my imagination and what a machine. This wasn't just a flimsy little 2- or 3-man capsule perched like a thimble on top of a rocket that was going to be thrown away, but a spaceship with wings, the size of an airliner, that, after performing her mission, was going to soar down and land on a runway before being prepared for the next mission. As a child that had been bitten hard by the aviation bug, Columbia felt like a spaceship I could get excited about. If you'd told me that 30 years later, I'd be meeting and talking to the men who flew her, I'd have probably blasted off myself, unable to contain the thought of something so thrilling. Into the Black tells the story of Columbia's first flight. In writing it, I wanted to try to recapture some of the excitement that surrounded the occasion and convey the scale of the achievement involved in bringing her to life. The shuttle was the last hurrah of the Apollo generation. One last magnificent technical marvel that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. The Space Shuttle, a flying machine regarded by many of the astronauts as the finest ever built, was too often characterized by either a sort of unimpressed familiarity or by tragedy. I wanted Into the Black to be a celebration. Through the course of my research, it became richer and more fascinating. The story of 2 space programs, civilian and military, and of how, during the epic first flight of Columbia, they came together in a hidden, gripping, high-stakes race against time that had never been told before. Before listening, there are a few things you need to know. Like most large organizations founded for a specific purpose, NASA loves an acronym and is fond of a contraction. Mostly this makes sense. It's quicker and easier to talk about SRBs instead of solid rocket boosters, FRSI instead of felt reusable surface insulation, TPS as opposed to thermal protection system, and CAPCOM, not capsule communicator. Sometimes there's humor in an acronym. TFNG's was more polite than describing the 1978 astronaut intake as the effing new guys. Sometimes it can get a little excessive. PLT instead of pilot is the one that springs to mind. To a general reader, it can quickly become overwhelming, and so I've made an effort not to use acronyms as freely as they appeared both in NASA literature and in the conversations I've had with NASA personnel. Halfway through the story that follows, the home of NASA Manned Spaceflight in Houston changed name from Manned Spacecraft Center to Johnson Space Center. Needless to say, that also meant it changed from MSC to JSC. As often as possible, I've done my best simply to refer to it as Houston. Students of the Space Shuttle program will be aware that, technically speaking, the term Space Shuttle refers not just to the familiar white and black spaceplane, but to the whole launch assembly, including the big fuel tank and twin rocket boosters. The spaceplane alone is correctly labelled the orbiter. However, given that pretty much everyone understands that the Space Shuttle is the spaceplane with wings that lands on a runway at the end of the mission, I felt maintaining that distinction was both pedantic and confusing. I've used the terms Space Shuttle and orbiter interchangeably. The dialogue in the book is drawn from what I've been told in interviews was said by those who were there, from contemporary recordings, or what's been reported in previous accounts, official, unofficial, published and unpublished. I've also used exchanges laid down by documents like standard operating procedures. Given the ceaseless training that ensured procedures were followed, I hope that those involved will agree that it's an accurate reflection of what was said at the time. As with speech, where I've recorded people's thoughts, they represent direct transcriptions of what I've been told by participants or have read that they were thinking at the time. Nowhere have I paraphrased or made up speech in order to help the story along. Much of the material in the latter part of the book remains deeply classified. Those with the required security clearances to tell the story are not permitted to talk about it. I've pieced together events from a wide variety of sources to produce an account that is the fullest and most accurate yet published, and I've had some reassurance that this is the case. However, any mistakes are my own.